Theodore, welcome to season 2 of the Lake and Bridge podcast.
You?
See
Nice
you.
to be here. Good to be here.
Been on a little hiatus here for a couple of months.
Yeah.
Dotting our I's and crossing our T's and hunkering down during the Omicron wave.
I thought the crew had gone on strike or something. But
yeah. But we're back and we're calling this season 2.
Yes. Sophomore.
Yep. So you can hear all of our season 1 episodes on YouTube under, well, if you found this one, then you found the other ones, I guess.
Good sleuthing.
We're now in season 2. How will season 2 be different than season 1?
Oh, I guess people will have to tune in and find out.
I think
we're gonna have special guests this year. We were talking about having special guests.
Yeah, we might try to line up some guests.
Some interviews.
Clearly, we're going to be wearing yellow themed shirts.
Yes, I have a t-shirt on.
Yep.
Because it's not snowing here today.
And I don't know. We'll try to we'll try to have some really good topics, and we'll try to get some guests.
Yeah.
But you're doing okay?
Yeah, doing good. Glad to be back in the Lake and Bridge studios. And yeah, it's been busy. I'm looking forward to spring. Looking forward to opening windows and having fresh air.
Yeah.
And yeah.
We opened the window just for an afternoon the other day because it was 70.
Wow.
And it was nice to get some fresh air. It really changes the whole.
Oh yeah.
Pulls the whole place together.
It does. I know we've done it a couple times. Even if it gets like 50 or something, 55, we'll open the window and the cats go crazy. They're like, "Oh my gosh, what is that?" They love it.
And baseball's back. That's exciting.
Yeah. I didn't really follow what they were doing with that whole. What was it? The owners and the players or something?
Yeah, they were at odds.
Yeah. Extremely rich people arguing.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't really follow too much of that.
But I thought we were going to lose part of the season, but we didn't, so that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How are the Mets going to be this year?
I think I'm very excited. I think we have a great pitching staff, great starting pitching.
Yeah.
3 of the best in the game, all on our staff.
Yeah.
And the lineup is okay. It's not stellar, but it's okay. And the bullpen's decent. But the starting pitching, if everyone stays healthy, could be honestly historic.
Yeah.
But,
102 seasons, 102 wins or something.
Well, yeah, I don't know.
I think, yeah, the Reds surprised me last year, Cincinnati.
Yep.
I think I'm planning on hanging out in the basement this year. So,
But they still have my guy. They still have what's his name? The first baseman,
Joey Votto.
Yeah.
He's a Reds guy for a lifetime. Yeah, he needs help though. I mean, he needs other people.
Yeah.
He's always pretty solid and a very entertaining interview. He doesn't give you the normal, answers, we just got to go out there and hit the ball kind of answers. So
I like that guy.
Yeah.
What's that line from Bull Durham? Some days you win, some days you lose, some days it rains.
Yeah. I love that movie.
Yeah.
Meat. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about today again?
What are we talking about today? Okay, you tell me if I got this right.
I usually get these wrong, so
we're doing 2 albums from each decade, starting with the 60s, that you and I could not live without, or kind of defined the decade for us. Like, is that
personally? Yeah.
Even though I wasn't alive in the 60s, I'm gonna kind of like just jump in.
Yeah.
I almost was, and I missed it by a year.
I was around in the 60s
You were around.
as a wee lad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a hard one, that decade.
All right, so let's start there. So two albums that from that decade that you could not live without. Let's hear what you got.
The first album I chose is one that I think I've chosen in other shows. It's The Love Supreme, John Coltrane.
Also one of William Shatner's favorite albums.
Right, as I found out the other day, thanks to you, I have a list of William Shatner's favorite albums. I think it's just a perfect album. I think it's got so much depth to it, and the songwriting is great. The performances are great. The production, the great story about Coltrane putting the whole album together. Like writing it out and coming downstairs and saying to his wife Alice, "I've got it. I finally got the whole thing." And then going into the studio. It's got his classic band on it. Elvin Jones and McCoy Tyner, and they'd been playing together for a while, so they all fit together really nicely, and it's a brilliant album, and yeah, one of my favorites.
With you there.
I never get tired of that record. That one was an easy choice. My second album, I'm not sure yet. I'm still working on it. I want to hear your choices.
Okay.
Well, I have all these albums written out. The 60s was hard because that was the, kind of the decade where making albums became a thing, right?
Yeah.
Before that, the singles were the thing, people put out albums in the 50s, obviously. There's great Miles Davis records and Sinatra and, Sarah Vaughan and all these other people, but the 60s were,
yeah, I think you could make the argument that the 60s is when the album is created. Even though, yes, you make some good points, and I think you could even argue that Sinatra maybe was the first one to come up with like a concept album, where an album was really a collection of songs meant for a purpose of being together, as opposed to just
singles, or they kind of cobbled together these recordings
with me, right? And what's that other one, Ring a Ding Ding, that album?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I guess we could have started with the 50s, but it just didn't feel like I didn't feel like I'd be able to pull an album from the 50s that really personally meant a lot to me. So, all apologies to the great albums that did come out in the 50s, but we just, well, that's okay. You could have one. You don't have to have two.
I had Beatle records, obviously.
Yeah.
There's quite a few. I had Rolling Stone records.
Yeah. I
had Let It Bleed.
Yeah.
From '69, which I think is a kind of a perfect record.
Yeah.
And I think I chose that one. That was on my list because it's almost like a signpost for the end of the 60s,
Yeah.
It's the end of the flower power period. This is a kind of a dark record. It opens with, Give Me Shelter, which it's a pretty kind of spooky song, to me at least.
Yeah, definitely.
But then I also, I chose some Beatles. I chose a Kinks record. I don't know. That was a hard decade for me.
Sorry.
So, yeah.
The 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s all were hard for me. It's very hard to whittle it down to two. But you know what? I kept coming back to this idea of could not live without, right? So it's kind of like doing the Desert Island Discs concept, where you're saying to yourself, this is what I'd be listening to for the rest of my life if I had to listen to something for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So, so this essentially became a Beatles. I had to figure out which Beatles album could I not. That's really what it became, right? Because, and then there was the possibility that the Beatles would actually cancel themselves out. Kind of like when the same player from two players from the same team split the MVP votes, and then it goes
Oh
to
yeah,
somebody
yeah.
else.
Right.
But eventually I had to just say, okay, it's got to be, one of them has to be a Beatles record, because I'm not going to go the, I'm not going to live without a Beatles record. So that's just not going to happen. So I fretted and I tore my hair out for a very long time trying to figure which one it would be. And ultimately I went with Abbey Road.
Oh, okay. 69, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was really down to Abbey Road or the White Album, because the White Album would just give me some songs to have.
Right. Yeah.
But I went with Abbey Road because, with the exception of Maxwell's Silver Hammer, which I actually can tolerate if I have to. It's just a perfect
That's
album.
when you go to the bathroom, right? You're gonna go to the bathroom.
And obviously Revolver. But see, the thing with Revolver and Rubber Soul, which are great, those early albums are actually very short. Every
Right, they're like 30 minutes
short.
or something.
Yeah, that you're almost out of the album within.
Right.
So I wanted something that had some time to it. And Abbey Road just has so many great songs that
Yeah.
I'd probably go back and listen to more than any other Beatles songs, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. I was surprised.
What?
Oh, go ahead. Oh no, I was going to say, when we were talking about one of our episodes, I went back and listened. I hadn't listened to the White Album in years, probably, and I put it on last winter, and I was like, I like this a lot more than I thought I did. And it's supposed to be a record where they weren't really liking each other, and they were recording a lot of the stuff by themselves, and but it my God, there's some great songs on that record. So anyway, that's my side path.
Yeah.
Back to you.
No, and my second album I chose was, for me, it was, I had to have a band album. And everybody, rightfully so, chooses the Big Pink as their best album, and it is excellent. But so this becomes the personal part. I grew up with the Brown album, the one that's just called The Band.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
We didn't have Big Pink in the house when I was growing up. For some reason, we had that one. And that was the one I listened to all the time. And so it really is my favorite band album.
Yeah.
And there's just no way I could live without that album.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah,
I'm going with Abbey Road and the band, the Brown album, as my 60s albums. And it was very hard to not pick a Simon and Garfunkel album. That felt difficult. So I guess my honorable mention would be Bookends by Simon and Garfunkel.
Oh yeah. Yep. That's a good one.
So that's my 60s.
That's cool. Yeah.
Should we move on to the 70s?
Sure.
Okay.
70s. You want me to go first?
Yeah, you go ahead.
Okay. I bookended the 70s. I have an album that came out in 1970, which is Curtis Mayfield's first record, called Curtis. It was, Curtis Mayfield was in the Impressions. He was a producer. He produced that song by the Five Stair Steps, Ooh Child, along with tons of other stuff.
He produced that?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
He was a great arranger. And so he left the Impressions, but the Impressions still stayed together. He was still kind of part of them, but he was doing a solo record. So, and he put out this record just called Curtis, recorded in Chicago with his band that would kind of stay with him for most of the 70s. But it's got Move On Up. It's got great horn arrangements on it. It's got If There's a Hell Below. This was probably, I think, maybe a year or two before Superfly. And I think it kind of defines that period, with like Isaac Hayes and Marvin Gaye, putting out records, Al Green. And this one always kind of rose to the top for me as far as that that genre, the R&B genre of that period, you know. And my second record, and I'm going to claim I'm going to, this album actually came out in 79 in every part of the world except the United States, where it came out in 1980.
I think I know what you're going with.
So this is London Calling by The Clash.
Oh, okay. Okay.
What do you think?
I thought you were going to go with Elvis Costello. What would it be? This year's model, or which?
Oh,
Which
I don't know.
No, which is the album that came out in the 70s? The first one, right? Which is what, My Aim Is True?
Oh yeah, was that 77 or 78?
I think it's 78, maybe.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So I'm going with the UK release of London Calling, which came out in December of 79.
Okay.
Produced by Guy Stevens, who had worked with like Mott the Hoople and these other English bands in the 70s. Kind of a real eccentric guy. There's a great documentary you can watch on the making of London Calling, and it showed for them like a growth. They started out as this kind of punk band, with the Sex Pistols and the Buzzcocks, and then their second album was, I think, produced by the guy who produced Blue Oyster Cult. So their second album was kind of like really loud, heavy guitars, and this one I think just showed like them as lovers of music. Like all these different influences, reggae and rock and 60s pop bands, and it just the whole album worked. It's a double record. It's got a great cover with Paul Simon, the bass player, smashing his bass.
Yeah,
Um,
that Elvis Presley font, right?
yeah. Yeah, it's a great sounding record too, and I think it still holds up production wise. It doesn't sound dated. There's not any cheesy synthesizers on it.
Now, did the UK version have Train in Vain on it?
Yeah, that was like the hidden track, I think.
Oh no, not Train. Was it Train in Vain as the hidden track, or Lost in a Supermarket?
No, Train in Vain was the hidden track. Yeah. Yeah.
Is Lost in a Supermarket on that album?
Yep.
Or is it a different album? It is, right?
No, that's on London Calling. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
No, it's a great. Both of those are great albums.
Yeah. So both of those were hugely influential for me as a young person playing music and learning how to play music and how stuff was put together, how stuff sounded.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those were big for me.
I love
So.
That. Yeah. Cool.
That's what I got.
Great.
So what do you got?
Did you have an honorable mention for the 70s?
Oh boy. There was a couple, yeah. I had the Jam All Mod Cons, which is a 78, came out in 78. Their third record. Really great songwriting. Again, it's like the third record where they kind of find their footing and are writing great songs, and the band's tight and the production's good. That was one of them. I'm trying to think what else. I think that's all I had. Okay. But there were so many. There's a lot of great records from the 70s.
I always make the argument that the 70s are the greatest era of music.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. At least, modern music. Someone might argue that the 1870s was a great era of music.
You're crazy. Right.
You're going to put the Clash up against Bach? I mean, come on. Actually, I'm probably making a fool out of myself, because I don't know if Bach composed in the 1870s. So
it was before that, yeah. That's okay
though. But yeah, I think that more good stuff came out of the 70s than any other decade, at least of our little game here.
Yeah.
Me personally, probably a million people would argue that it was the 60s, but I'm going to go with the 70s.
Yeah.
Some of the worst music also came out of the 70s.
Right.
That was a bad era for a lot of genres, for sure.
Yeah. There was,
but man, there's some great stuff. So it was very hard to pick from that decade. Very hard.
How did you narrow yours down? Did you have a list, and you?
Well, in one instance, I went with the greatest hits, which I normally would never ever do. But one of mine is Changes One Bowie.
Oh, yeah.
And again, that's a personal thing because we had that album when I was growing up. And so in many ways, that was my introduction to Bowie.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, we also had Station to Station and Diamond Dogs and a couple of others. We did not have Hunky Dory growing up in the house.
Yeah.
So for me, I listened to Changes One Bowie more than anything else. And because I was a kid, I didn't realize that it was a greatest hits album. I thought it was an album.
Right.
So that's one of my choices because it has everything on it, you know.
Oh,
It doesn't
yeah.
have things like Life on Mars and Lady Stardust and The Man Who Sold the World. So it is lacking quite a few really good songs.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you want the jukebox David Bowie from the 70s,
That's the one. Yeah.
that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, yeah, just about everybody I know had that in their collection,
Yeah.
even if they had the Bowie records.
Beautiful album cover too of him so like pensively looking off into the distance.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
So that was one of them. And the other one is Born to Run by Bruce Springsteen, which
Okay.
still to me holds up as just a perfect album from start to finish. It only has, I think, 8 songs on it, maybe 9. So there aren't a lot of songs on it, but it is stacked in every single way. It's him throwing everything but the kitchen sink at the production, which he's talked about a lot.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
He wanted to make a rock album that left nothing on the table, you know. I think kind of like, if this is all I do, I'm not gonna leave anything out there that I wanted to, like, it's all going in there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's got great horns, you know, like on 10th Avenue Freeze Out. That's almost like a funk R&B inspired song, like a Van Morrison kind of horn section.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
It's got a beautiful ballad, Thunder Road, that turns into a great rock and roll song, which is some of the most beautiful lyrics he's ever written is in that song. Then he's got this epic thing that ends the whole album, Jungle Land, which is like it's really like a little mini opera, which I'm actually surprised they never turned into a Broadway show. Like just Jungle Land.
Hey, there's still time.
Yeah, he's got all these characters that come up, and then he's got Spirit in the Night. Oh no, that's on Greetings from Asbury Park. Sorry, but you know, it's filled with characters. All his street characters that he creates. Well, many of them are probably real, but the number of people that he names, name checks on that album.
Yeah.
Whether it's Wendy on the motorcycle in Born to Run, or Mary and her dress waves on the screen, the screen door slams and Mary's dress waves. And then later he's talking about the guy, one of his friends that he in it's just tons and tons of like characters that he comes up with.
Oh yeah.
So, and then the title, you know, Born to Run, the song is just, man, if you need a song to announce that the nice weather is here and it's time to roll down the windows, I don't think there's anything ever written that tops that song. And
that'll be you in about a week.
Introductory drum, what?
That'll be you in about a week, right? Down in New York.
Yeah. Yeah.
Blasting it from your car.
Yeah.
What year did that record come out?
75.
Okay.
The guy was 25 years old writing that.
Wow.
I mean, it's incredible. And leading a band, like being a band leader, and essentially also, I mean, he didn't produce it alone, but he really did play the role of producer for the most part.
Yeah.
And he pushed them so hard with Born to Run, the song, like just to make that song what it is. He just he bled the E Street Band dry. and that's where he became the boss, you know.
Yep.
So,
wow. That's cool. Those two. All right.
Which means I had to leave out Blue by Joni Mitchell, which broke my heart. uh, those punk albums that you were referencing earlier.
Yeah.
Tell the Velvet Underground. Doesn't Lou Reed's what's that album? Violet? No. What's the album that has Walk on the Wild Side?
Oh yeah, I don't know the name of it.
I can't remember the title.
Yeah.
But, leaves off My Aim Is True. I had to leave off Talking Heads 77. I had to leave off my trio of Stevie Wonder albums that I adore.
Yeah, I think people were really firing on all their cylinders in the 70s. I mean,
yeah.
And even though it kind of went through different, there was, the kind of, country folk rock scene, with, people like, Jackson Brown or whatever, and the Eagles, which I'm not a huge fan of, but it was like they were putting out quality material.
Yeah.
And then there was this.
I had to leave off Blood on the Tracks.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Which is painful. And Tea for the Tillerman, right? Cat Stevens. And
yeah.
I mean, it's just a loaded decade, and in every genre,
Yeah, it's true, right?
Even hip hop gets started really, right, in the late 70s.
Late 70s, and down in your neck of the woods.
Yep.
Yeah, there's disco was, disco gave away the kind of, punk and.
Yeah, the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack.
Right, Chic. And Chic, yeah.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
That's why I say I just think the 70s are the best. I think that's the best decade of music.
Yeah, you had to have you pretty much had to have a record.
Prince got started in the 70s, right? His first album.
That's right. Yeah.
Michael Jackson, Off the Wall, is the 1970s.
Right, that's 79, right? Yeah. That's it. That was a huge record.
Riches, the 1970s.
I know. Now we come up to the 1980s.
You ready?
I think so, which was also an era of like all over the place. It was like people, we have all this technology now,
Yeah.
And we were going to use it. And we were going to turn that gate to 11, and we're going to turn the reverb up and the chorus, everything,
Mm-hmm.
And we were going to program the drums and, yeah. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes it didn't work so well.
The 80s for me is the decade where is the decade that has the most stuff that didn't age well.
Yeah, I chose two records that I think aged well, that maybe weren't. I think they did okay. But I think I can still play those records today, and they sound good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you got?
So I hope. Well, I have they make all my list, XTC.
Yeah.
Skylarking. Which came out in 86, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think. I'll go back to my apartment. Where was I living? Yeah. 86. Yeah. Just a beautiful, beautiful record. Produced by Todd Rundgren. Well, I guess it wasn't the the happiest of recordings for the band. And they recorded some of it in Woodstock, actually. And some of it out in San Francisco. They flew over from the UK. And it's not really a concept record, but the songs flow together so nicely that you almost think it is. It's like kind of like it's like a day in the life. All these songs, starting out in the morning and ending up in the evening, kind of thing. And I think it's got really good production values for that era. The drums sound really nice. The guitars sound great. There's not a ton of like crazy effects that you're going to cringe at when you hear.
Yeah.
The songwriting is just beautiful.
See, their guitars have aged well, but they definitely are 80s sounding guitars. I don't know
that record.
Yeah, but in a good way, like not in the way that has aged badly.
What do you think an 80s guitar sounds like?
I don't know, like maybe I don't know if there's one answer to that, but like The Cure, their guitar sound is an 80s guitar sound, but it's a great one. Like it's aged well.
Right. Yeah.
U2, right? The Edge's guitar to me
Uh-huh.
always is I know instantly we're in the 80s, but it's a cool sound, but it's still a sound that kind of came out of the 80s.
Okay.
And I don't know. With XTC, I can hear the same thing. Like I know that it's an 80s album,
Hmm.
but that doesn't mean I don't like it. I don't,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean it hasn't aged well.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes sense.
I think so. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of other examples that just kind of, I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
No, it's okay. Yeah, I think it doesn't sound like the 80s because it's got for me it doesn't, because it's got interesting string arrangements as well that are actual string quartets playing these parts
Hmm.
and not a synthesized, configuration of that. Yeah, I think it's just I think it's a really beautiful record. Um,
It is great.
what else did I? The other record I chose is also is John Hyatt's "Spring the Family," which is kind of a totally different sound than XTC, and it's got bare bones production. It doesn't. I don't think it doesn't really put it in the 80s. It's more like a 60s kind of sounding record to me. The guy, do you know McCabe's Guitar Shop in LA?
Mm-mm.
It's a pretty famous place where they sell guitars and they have shows. And I guess John Hyatt used to play out there a lot. And one of the guys that worked there said, "I love your songs, but I hate your records. Your records sound, they're just overproduced. You got, they just let me produce one of your records." And I guess he was in a spot where he was like, "Yeah, I'll try anything at this point," because he really wasn't doing that well, commercially. And this guy produced, and he got Ry Cooder to play on it, and Nick Lowe plays on it, and Jim Keltner. So you have this incredible rhythm section, who probably can't do any wrong, churning out these songs. And the production is, I think favors the songs. It doesn't, try for fancy production techniques or anything.
Hmm.
So that's my other pick for the 80s.
What's that called again?
Bring the Family.
Okay.
It's got Thing Called Love on it. It's got Memphis in the Meantime. Have a Little Faith in Me.
Okay.
And yeah, listen to Jim Keltner's drums on Thing Called Love. He swings in such a unique way that
That's the song that Bonnie Raitt did later.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hers is, well, it's a lot poppier.
I've heard his too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His kind of growls a little bit
Or
more.
growly, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And
great.
it swings, definitely. It swings. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with Bonnie Raitt either. So
Yeah.
I'm sure I made John Hyatt a lot of money too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Those are great choices.
So my two choices, what do you got?
Makes me want to go listen to those albums right now.
Right.
I've got, speaking of U2, The Unforgettable Fire, which for me is still, I think, one of their two or three best albums. Maybe for a long time it was my favorite one. It's kind of like the last album that they make as the old version of U2, like as the original Dublin guys, the boys from Dublin, still singing kind of like small stories.
Yeah.
Although, they're starting to blossom out with Pride in the Name of Love and things like that and become the arena U2 that they're going to become.
Right. Yeah.
But there's most of the songs on that album are still pretty stripped down and very, Irish countryside sounding.
Okay. Yeah.
So I really love that album. I also love War. So those two albums are actually probably my favorite U2 albums. But the Unforgettable Fire, I think, just that it also has that song "Bad" on it, which later became the live version of "Bad" actually became more well known later on.
Okay.
But that's I think one of their best songs that they ever wrote. Um,
What year did that come out?
I think the Unforgettable Fire came out in 80. Well, let's see. Joshua Tree comes out in 85, I believe.
Hmm.
So this was probably 84. I'll have to go look it up.
Okay.
I think War was 82.
Yeah.
So I think the Unforgettable Fire slips in right in between those two albums. And I think, really it had their first crossover hit too. Pride in the Name of Love, I think,
Yeah.
becomes more than just an alternative rock station hit, but also
Oh
like
yeah.
a mainstream hit.
Right. That kind of starts catapulting them onto the next level of,
Yeah.
yeah.
I have
Right.
to look up who produced that. I don't know if they had Brian Eno and Daniel Lanois in their pocket yet. They might have. They might be on that album, but I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So I'll look that up later. But so that's one. And then
Yeah.
other one is Purple Rain. Purple
Ah,
Rain. I could not live without Purple Rain.
couldn't live it.
No. It's just another perfect album. It defines my teenage life, really. And
Oh yeah.
so does the Unforgettable Fire. I mean, those albums were just a constant part of, my
When
high
you were
school,
younger.
being in
Yeah.
high school.
Yeah, that means a lot when you're in high school, the records
Yeah,
that you listen to.
definitely. I mean, another
Yeah.
one would have been Speaking in Tongues, Talking Heads,
Uh-huh.
Graceland. Definitely,
Hmm.
that was an honorable mention for sure,
Yeah.
uh, and many, many others. But ultimately, I went with those two.
That's cool.
Yeah, very different
Yeah.
albums for sure.
No, definitely, yeah.
Um, I don't think Purple Rain needs to be really unpacked and discussed.
What makes it so good?
Yeah.
Yes. Well,
Um,
that was like another record that kind of pushed him to I mean, he was already very well known, but
well, it's interesting.
right.
I think I always think of the Unforgettable Fire
Hmm.
in 1999 as the albums that set up the Joshua Tree and
Hmm.
Purple Rain, because
Oh,
like
okay.
those two albums, both artists did not really explode yet,
Hmm.
but they both had like hits on them that were kind of like getting the world ready for what was about to happen.
Right.
And then the
Right.
Joshua Tree and Purple Rain just
Right. They were everywhere.
game over.
You couldn't escape. And MTV helped both of those
Yeah,
people,
yeah,
both
definitely.
those bands. Yeah, big time. Yeah, move on up. Man, oh man. Are we up to the 90s now?
We're up to the 90s. Did you have any 80s honorable mentions?
I had Los Lobos on there. Um, who else did I had? Yeah, I did.
Which Los Lobos album?
Um, the Wolf, which one is it called?
Uh,
It's got oh my gosh.
yeah, it's something like the wolf sleeps tonight, or the Hungry Lion.
Yeah,
I
I gotta
forget.
look it up. I gotta look it up now.
Uh,
It's been a long day. This is my third Zoom.
oh no,
No, it's okay. Um,
Zoom
what did
fatigue. We should move
it's,
faster.
oh, how will the wolf survive?
Yeah, how will the wolf survive? Yeah.
Yeah, I had but leading up to the 90s, I put Los Lobos into the 90s
Yes. Which album?
with Kiko, um, which came out in 92, I think. And it's such a cool record. It definitely has some, 90s feel to it, I think Mitchell Froom produced it,
Mm.
who was one of those producers that kind of like put his Mitchell Froom stamp on things,
Mhm.
in the way it sounded. Um, it's got that great song "Dream in Blue" that opens the record. Uh, it's still got the Los Lobos kind of rootsy sound to it. You know, as far as the songwriting goes and the instrumentation, there's a
Mhm.
lot of you know, traditional Mexican instruments that are used on the record, combined with like this 90s production, which is really cool, I think. You know, and it's got Kiko and the Lavender Moon, which is a really nice song.
Mm.
And then that song, I don't know if you know the song Angels with Dirty Faces.
Mm-mm.
It's got such a cool like rhythm track, you know.
Mm.
It takes you, like, you listen to it and you're like, where's that hitting? Where, you know, it's like one of those things where you like almost have to count it out to figure out where things are happening, but it's not in a way that kind of, you know, messes up the groove. It just like works perfectly.
Mm.
So that's one of my records, Kiko, which I never get tired of listening. And my other record, it goes back to one of the people that played on John Hyatt's record. It's Ry Cooder with Ali Farka Touré, a record called Talking Timbuktu. And it's, you know, just two beautiful guitar players creating these just incredible songs. And I play it for people that are like, I couldn't believe I missed this record, you know.
Mm.
But it's so nice. The record is beautiful. It's really well produced.
Mm.
Ry Cooder is such a tasteful player anyway. You know, I don't think he ever overplays. And of course, Ali Farka Touré is a legend, you know, as far as, you know, desert blues guitar players of Africa. So those are my two choices for the 90s.
Very nice. That gives me some listening to do. That's great.
Yeah. All right. What you
I
got?
like that our lists are, there's no overlap yet.
I know.
That's cool. All
Yeah,
right.
this was hard to do. This was hard. I like thought about this long and hard.
Yeah, maybe at some point we should go back and do that other idea you had, which is just 10 best albums of each decade.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're kind of mentioning a lot of them now, but
Right. Yeah.
my 90s albums are the first one is Grace by Jeff Buckley.
Oh yeah. Beautiful
Which
record.
almost, I think, doesn't need to be kind of explained at this point. It's kind of
Yeah.
I think so much has been said about it, but for me, it's just a combination of the most beautiful guitar tone I've ever heard.
Mm-hmm.
He got, and I watched a video recently about how did Jeff Buckley get the guitar tone that he had on Grace.
Uh-huh.
And it was just like this combination of reverb and delay and a twinge of chorus, I think, you know, and
Yeah.
just beautiful, perfect storm of effects that, and I think it's a Telecaster, although I'd have to look that up.
I think he did. Yeah, I remember him playing one at least live. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of the live stuff.
So just that guitar tone, along with his, you know, very, very unique and powerful voice,
Right.
emotional, beautifully emotional voice,
Oh yeah.
interwoven into some of the most incredible songs I think
Mhm.
anyone ever wrote.
Yeah, that album has to be on the top 10 of any 90s list, you know.
Yeah.
It's just a beautiful record. Yeah.
And also just a personal thing. Like I can remember every moment that goes along with the discovery of that album,
Mm-hmm.
the playing of that album, times in the 90s where I needed that album to get me through things, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Walking
Yeah.
around New York City with that on my Walkman or my whatever I had then, my iPod, I guess. That was, the iPods were out by then.
What year was that? Yeah.
I have to look up when that came out. I'm going to say maybe 94, 95.
Wow. You had an early iPod.
Yeah, first one.
Wow.
Very first one, yeah. So, you know, there's these personal landscape kind of storytelling parts of your own life that these albums become connected.
Oh yeah.
So,
yep.
And then the other one, this probably wouldn't be on a lot of people's 90s lists, but I'm With Stupid by Amy Mann.
Oh yeah.
Which still to me is my favorite album of hers. This was before she kind of settled into her alt folk
Uh-huh.
thing. and
Yep.
like started having songs and soundtracks, and
Right. Oh yeah.
those are also great songs. But I'm With Stupid is like this really raw album. It's like there's not a bad song on it. Difford and Tilbrook are all
Mhm.
over it with her from
Oh
Squeeze,
yeah.
and they helped her a lot, I think, with a lot of the arrangements and
Yeah. Yeah.
vocal harmonies and things like that. But
Right.
still, she wrote all the songs, and she never really went back to that style, that kind of like raw,
Hmm.
grungy kind of thing.
Yeah. You think it's something she just wanted to, you know, try out and see how it fit? And
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Maybe she was just going through a moment.
yeah,
maybe
right.
maybe it was just like that time of the 90s where that was the popular
Right.
sound. So
Sure.
she wanted to make one that way. But
What year is that? What year did that come out?
good question. Probably also around 94, I would say.
Yeah. Right around there.
Yeah. Uh, I remember going to see her once, and she was taking requests from the audience,
Uh-huh.
and somebody yelled out, there's this one song on that album called Super Ball,
Uh-huh.
and she genuinely didn't know how to play it because she had written it, recorded it for that album, and then never touched it again.
Oh, funny.
She was like standing on stage, like trying to find the chords,
Oh, wow.
and she couldn't do it. And she was like, "I'm sorry, I can't, I don't remember how that goes."
Oh, that's so funny.
Um, but it did have a big, it had a moderately sized hit for her, I think, that song, That's Just What You Are.
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
That
Yeah.
may have been her biggest solo hit
Yeah.
until maybe some of those songs that were on soundtracks. I think she won an Oscar at some point for one of those songs from Magnolia or
Oh,
something.
Magnolia. Yeah, that was a great soundtrack. Yeah. Yeah. That
But
is nice.
before she started doing all that, she made that album, and it's really great.
Cool.
Yeah,
I like it.
probably. I left off stuff like OK Computer, which is, I think that's the 90s. That might be the 2000s. I had to look that up.
I
Uh,
think that's 90s. Yeah.
Girlfriend by Matthew Sweet, which I loved, and
Yeah.
there's tons of great stuff in the 90s. I mean, it's another great decade.
Uh-huh. Right. We were young.
Yeah.
We had energy. And now we're moving on to
All
the
right, we're new decade,
2000s, right?
the double zeros.
Yeah. Did this get easier or harder for you?
The double zeros were still pretty easy.
Yeah.
They're hard from the point of view of having to leave albums off, but easy in terms of finding two that were great.
Yeah. Yeah. I felt, it got a little, not harder, but just different, I think, because I was starting, becoming a parent and married, and, you know, the only time I went out to see music was when I would be playing. So I wasn't really, you know, and I lost track of like a lot of like what new stuff was coming out. So I would just buy, like every once in a while I would get something new,
Mhm.
but I felt like I was, missing a lot of stuff maybe, but well, not in a bad way, just the way life changes kind of way.
Yeah,
But I have another old favorite of mine, Richard Thompson,
yeah.
in his 2000 release, The Old Kit Bag, which I don't think is a favorite among Richard Thompson diehards, but I always love that record.
Hmm.
Um, Again, it's a really simple production. It's the same guy who produced Bring the Family, John Hyatt's record, produced this record. And I think Richard Thompson had come out of a period of these albums that had been maybe a little bit overproduced. There was always, there was always great songs on it, but I think sometimes it was a little bit stuck in some, questionable production things, so this kind of went back to more basic, like guitar, some stand-up bass, percussion, some really nice backing vocal harmonies from a female singer, and I think it's an album that works from front to back. I think it works really well. Solid songwriting, really nice, crisp, clean production.
Why do you think
um
some Richard Thompson fans don't listed as one of their favorites.
I don't know, but I mean, I'm on these, as a Richard Thompson nerd, I'm on these Facebook groups, and every once in a while it comes up, and you know, I don't think it gets as much attention as some of his other records. But I like it as as like a young parent, having this, a new Richard Thompson record. I know Richard Thompson. I'm going to buy this record, So it's got some of that for me. It's got, but I'm not sure why. I notice that every once in a while on like the Facebook group or whatever, it doesn't get as much love as I think. There's people that obviously love it like I do, but I think we're in the minority. I'm not sure. He had a new drummer, like he had Dave Maddox, who had played with him in Fairport Convention, had been his drummer for a while, and he had a new drummer who's still with him, actually, Michael Jerome, who I think is just a brilliant percussionist. Sometimes that, like people get, like, well, how could he replace Dave Maddox? How could he do this? But I think, yeah, I think that record works really well. And my other record is by another North African band, Tianarwen, with Aman Iman, which is Water to Life. And it's like North African kind of trance blues. I think it came out in 2007. Really cool songs, really kind of like, you're listening to it and you're just like, these repeating patterns over and over again. These really intricate guitar things are weaving in and out of each other, playing with the meter and the measures, the tunings. You can tell a lot of them are like in this kind of interesting open G tuning, where there's kind of droning things going on. So yeah, those are my two records I would take from the.
Don't forget afterwards to put these in the. We'll put these in the the notes of the video. The what do you call it? Description.
Oh yeah.
Because I definitely want to look some of these up and get to know these albums, and maybe we'll make another Spotify playlist because that was fun.
Oh yeah, we could do that again.
Yeah.
Should we do that?
I'd love to. I'd love doing that.
Yeah.
It's nice to get to know your picks,
and vice versa.
Because I haven't listened to a lot of that genre of that part of the world, so it's really it's great for me to get exposed to that.
Yeah, that was, just another part of just being home more and kind of, looking to other musical genres,
Yeah.
As you realize you're not 20 anymore, and a lot of the stuff doesn't mean as much to you as it did,
Yeah.
New music coming out. Just for me personally. That's just how I felt. I know other
this
people.
Is also the decade that we met each other, I think.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
Yeah.
What are we meeting? 2008, something like that?
I think so, yeah.
Earlier? Was it earlier?
Might have been
2005. I don't know.
It was in Montpelier, I know that.
Yeah, I forget now. Maybe it was 05. I don't know.
I had dark hair because I have a picture of us somewhere at that gig.
Yeah. You weren't wearing a hat?
No. Showing off my hair.
Well, those are great. Those are great picks. I look forward to listening to those.
Oh, you.
This was not the decade that I got married or had kids.
I got married and had kids in the 90s, actually.
Oh, okay. But they were starting to grow.
Yeah, they were starting to become more active. We had more kids.
We had more kids.
Yeah.
But probably I would have had kids in the 00s if I was going to have them.
Yeah.
That's just the time of life where that was my 30s.
Yep.
So no. Yes, the 00s were my 30s. So at that point, I guess music was not defining my kind of like the way you said, it wasn't sort of like defining wasn't like a soundtrack to your life in the same way. It was more like I'm just discovering music because I enjoy listening to the music.
Yep.
So the two that stood out to me, and there were many, obviously, in that decade also, but the first one is a Wilco album called Sky Blue Sky, which I think I've mentioned in other podcasts before, and you know that I love that album.
Yeah, it's a great record.
I probably should have, picked Yankee Hotel Foxtrot for the 90s, but for some reason I just, the other two stood out a little bit more.
Yeah.
But for that decade, that album Sky Blue Sky really stood out for me, and I think it's one of their best. Maybe for me, I feel like it's my favorite.
Yeah.
But kind of like with your Richard Thompson, I don't think a lot of Wilco fans point to it as their favorite album, but I really adore it. I think it's their best collection of songs and just beautiful arrangements.
Yeah, it's a great sounding record too, I think.
Yeah, it's beautiful production. It's very thick. It's got like
it is thick, yeah.
Yeah, it's like
without being like, how some 70s records were thick and just kind of you lose frequencies.
Yeah.
But everything stands out really nicely.
Yeah, it's somehow thick and crisp at the same time.
Yeah.
So I don't know how they did that, but
did they produce it themselves or did they?
I'm terrible with this. I'll have to look that up.
Yeah. I have it right here.
You do?
I have it.
Oh, okay.
Oops. Where are you? No, that's not it. Maybe I don't.
It's got one of the best opening songs too. Right away, you're in for something different from them because it's not.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, it's not that sort of country twang grunge country.
Yeah.
That I kind of call their sound when they first started.
Grunge country.
So it's not that. It's also not the sort of experimental sound of Yankee Hotel Foxtrot.
Right. Yeah.
It's a whole different thing. And from that first opening song, it's something different from them.
Produced by Wilco. Yeah, they produced it themselves.
Okay.
So, and they recorded it at the Loft.
Oh, okay. It's a beautiful album cover too.
Yeah. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to open it up to get the full effect right off.
I know. I was gonna. Wow. I don't know. I can't see that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, it's just bird. So that was one, and the other one was this album by the Postal Service, "Give Up."
I remember you talking about them back then.
That album.
I know the name, but I don't. I remember you mentioning them, and then.
Yeah, it's the guy from Death Cab for Cutie.
Okay.
I forget his name. God, it's terrible. But he and some other musicians from other bands, they just exchanged tracks through the mail or through email. And they built an album where they never even played together in one studio. They just stitched it together with all these tracks they sent each other.
Oh, wow.
And it's a really great album.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I remember you talking about that back then.
Yeah.
That's
you don't know that album too much?
I don't. I have to go look at it now.
Go check. I think you'd like that record. It's really good.
Yeah.
It's got, first of all, again, it's grounded in great songs, and then
right. Yeah.
What they did is just very, very. It's very electronic.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of that time period, kind of like.
Oh yeah.
The television on the radio was coming out, and that sort of
experimental. Yeah.
Yeah, experimental electronic sound.
Yeah. Did they do any records after that, or was that like a one-off?
I think they made one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool though, too, right?
Yeah.
We're
it's
done.
really
We're
good.
finished.
It's a really good album.
Nice. All right, I think we'll definitely do a Spotify.
2010s. What do you got?
2010s. Okay, I got this. I have one that came out in 2010. I have a soundtrack, which I think made one of our other shows, the Crazy Heart soundtrack.
Oh yeah.
I love that soundtrack so much. T-Bone Burnett, who is no slouch as a songwriter, musician, producer. Maybe he's even good at baseball. I don't know. Probably. Yeah. He probably looks good. Yeah. On the playing field. Just a beautiful soundtrack, a collection of, some old songs by the Louvin brothers and Buck Owens and Kitty Wells, and some newer songs that just all work together, and some songs that Jeff Bridges sings, and even Colin Farrell. Really cool record, I think. And it's a good record if you're going on like a kind of a not so long road trip, because it's got a lot of songs. Robert Duvall sings a song on it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
So Crazy Heart, and then I'm going to jump to a completely different genre. Kamasi Washington, the Epic. This 3-record, I don't know what you call it, 3-disc album.
Yeah.
That came out, I guess, in 2018, maybe 2016, 17, somewhere around there. And I think he kind of reignited like this fire for the jazz scene, because it's this beautiful album. It's like this it's ambitious, 3 discs.
It's really good.
And there's these songs with these huge choruses on them, vocal choruses, not the effect of chorus, but people choruses, that are just, they sound so cool. It sounds like these early 60s kind of movie soundtracks, some of the songs. And he does a really cool cover of Cherokee, which my son Russell loves that version. He just totally loved it. He does a cover of Clair de Lune, but most of them are originals. And Winnie and I saw him. He came to the Burlington Jazz Festival that year, and it was a great show. So that's my other choice for the 2010s.
2010s.
Yeah. All right. What you got?
Very cool. I've got John Prine's last album, Tree of Forgiveness, which I think ended up on one of your lists.
Perfect Records. Yeah.
Yeah. Quite the last gift from him to us.
Right.
My cat just knocked my list on the floor, so hang on a second. But we both love that album, and
oh yeah, what a great record.
I keep thinking I for some reason I always think of The Giving Tree when I think of it, because it just keeps giving in terms of
I know
how much better it gets every time I listen to it. But of course, that's a book by Shel Silverstein, so it's not The Giving Tree, but it is The Tree of Forgiveness, and it is a great album, and I think one of the best albums to come out of that decade.
Oh yeah, what a beautiful record.
And the other one is another last album of someone's life, which is Black Star by David Bowie. Which could not be more different than Tree of Forgiveness. It's really kind of like it's like an alternative jazz album, sort of. It's like a prog rock, jazz, alternative rock.
Yeah.
And it gets weird at times, but man, it is good.
Oh yeah.
And talk about two guys saving some of their best for last. Like, holy smokes. Like, that's what they left us with, is just unbelievable.
Yeah. I think it's like a nice reminder that like you can think of yourself as this endless well of creativity, that this isn't the last song I'm going to write. This isn't the last great guitar hook. There's stuff always there,
Yeah.
And, I think people get stuck on that,
Bowie had an album that came out right before Black Star, which I was equally blown away by. It was kind of a comeback album for him too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you can. I mean, that's a weird phrase, right? Who knows if David Bowie needed a comeback? But it was a great album, and for some reason I'm totally blanking on the name.
Yeah, I don't remember that one.
But it's great, and I kind of played that one to death.
Yeah.
And like almost right on its heels comes Black Star, and like Black Star just made my jaw drop. Like I was like, what the hell is this? Is incredible. Like, this is so weird, and he's never done it. He's never really gone in this direction before, and it's haunting. Like the songs are really haunting. And there's one song that's kind of about his own death, and it's almost as if he knew.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that was a hard one. Yeah.
yeah, but those are two great albums, and I feel like I'm going to listen to Black Star tomorrow, actually, because I haven't listened to it in a while.
Oh yeah, I liked it too. Yeah. I remember being really excited by hearing about it. It's like Bowie's got a new record out, and it's like one of those people that you're like, well, I gotta, I have to check that out.
Yeah,
And yeah, it was like, wow, this is so cool
I just want to
that
quickly look up what the album was before that. If I know this is
yeah,
getting
yeah.
long, but just because I hate when I do that, when I just blank totally on a
Mhm.
um, I'm getting old, Ted.
You got a cold? What?
Oh, the next day. The next
Oh
day.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That came out the next day came out in 2013 and Black Star came out in 2016.
Wow, that's pretty
So
good.
yeah. All right, let's close out this puppy with the 2020s.
It's only like 2 years of records, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you able to
If that.
find anything?
Yeah, I got Allison Russell, Outside Child. She's a member. She played on. She was a member of a band called Birds of Chicago, and then she was part of the Native Daughters project.
Right.
She put out a great record last year called Outside Child, where just a beautiful kind of rootsy, kind of folky country record. Just a brilliant songwriting and production, and very personal album about growing up and about kind of some hard subjects like abuse, child abuse and stuff that she experienced and stuff that she's overcome as well. So it's got you know some other aspects of it that you're not completely like bummed out. It's like but it's a great record. And the other one is a record called Still Moving by Justin Adams and Mario Durante, which is kind of maybe a North African style record. It's got kind of Middle Eastern influences. Um, Mario Durante is a violinist from Italy, and Justin Adams is a guitar player. And they just put together this really cool record that didn't get a lot of attention last year, but I absolutely love. So, so what do you got?
Well, it was hard. The 2010s were, we're starting to get starting to get pretty hard now in the last 12 years to find really great full albums.
Uh-huh.
But two that caught my ear in the last 2 years were Bob Dylan's Rough and Rowdy Ways, which was a really interesting record for him. One of the songs on it is like a 13-minute, beautiful, like retrospective kind of song where he just kind of covers the last 50 years of life.
Wow.
It's really cool. And it's got some other really cool tracks on it too. So that I thought was a really good job by him. He continues to kind of astound me for the last really 25 years. It's weird that I didn't put one of his albums from the 2000s because they were so good.
Yeah.
And then the other one was the newest album by Fiona Apple. It's called Fetch the Bolt Cutters.
Oh yeah.
Did you give that a listen?
I did. That's an intense record too.
Yeah, it is. But typical of her, it's really interesting arrangements and
she's very talented. Yeah.
Really like driving, like angular kind of.
Yep, sure.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Yep. But it was good. I liked it.
Yeah, I like her a lot. She's very
impressed.
I think she's always very original and innovative with her songwriting and production. Yeah. Cool. We did it.
What is that, 50 years of
is anybody still listening?
50 years
that's right.
Yeah.
Closing the notebook.
Close the book on it.
Yeah, that's right.
But that was great. That was a fun topic. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, yeah. It was harder than I thought it was going to be. When I
Yeah.
actually like,
Definitely.
yeah,
But fun. Always fun to kind of like think through what is not just great music, but personally meaningful to us, you know?
yeah, yeah, exactly.
I would
Yeah.
love to hear other people's, if anybody wants to chime in and tell us some of the ones that you liked from those decades,
Yeah,
that'd be really cool. And tell us stories too. Like I love to hear the stories that go along with
with the albums.
the albums. Yeah.
Yeah,
But it's getting late. We've been on for a
it
while, so
is.
I'll bid you adieu.
Adieu, monsieur.
Talk again soon and get a good next topic.
All right, we'll be back.
All right. Peace.